and absolutely everybody is welcome, whatever your gender, your background, your orientation, race, political views, whatever. And whatever you bring today is very much welcome. And as we as we talk and as we sit together, um, I think it's very important that we all approach this with that sense of openness to what we're bringing on this day in this moment. So I'm Bob Stout, and I am one of the teachers here at the Center for Mindful Living. And you will have heard from Emily and Jerry, who are generously helping us, hosting us today. A little later, Emily's going to share some movement with us too. So we have until about noon, and I will try to finish up at noon sharp today because I'm actually attending a virtual retreat this afternoon. Um, but I think what we will do today is I'm going to begin with a brief opening meditation, just kind of getting us ready to sit together and really be together in this moment. And then I'm going to share a brief talk, um, setting up um, a metaphor that comes from the great teacher Ajahn Chah, which I'll tell you more about in a minute, that I think has some profound things to say about our meditation practice. And then we will either directly after that or after some movement, depending on the timing, we'll sit together. Um, and today I'm going to bring to you, which some of you may have experienced before, a rain meditation where we focus on feelings, challenging feelings that are arising, and how we allow those in meditation and deal with those. As I said, there'll be some movement and there'll be some time at the end for sharing as well. So that's where we're headed. And just so we can really come into this moment, why don't we start with a brief um, welcoming meditation? So just finding a comfortable position. And if you like, you can sit as we often do, or if you need to, feel comfortable to stand or lie down, whatever position works for you, just to sort of come into and begin resting in this present moment. If you haven't already, you can gently close your eyes or look down and with an unfocused gaze. I'm not doing anything magical here, just calming ourselves so we can experience what it's like to be in the here and the now. When we sit quietly, and notice how the body feels in this moment, beginning with the sensations of sitting, lying down, reclining, or standing. It's how it feels, how it we feel supported by the earth below, our feet touching the ground, maybe your bottom on the chair, your legs, your hands on your lap or beside you, maybe. Just noticing the physical sensations that are arising for you just right now in this moment. Noticing the breath just as it is. Noticing the sensations of breathing in and breathing out. Whatever sensations you notice as you breathe, maybe the air coming in through your nostrils or out through your mouth, sensation of the chest or the belly rising and falling as you breathe. The body just breathing itself, reminding us of the felt sense of being here in this moment. Breathing in, calming the body, and breathing out, calming the mind. Just noticing and accepting whatever is arising for you in this moment in silence. As we prepare to come back to our sense of community together, giving gratitude for this time together, for your practice, for just being here, allowing yourself the time to really feel what it's like to be in the moment, receive the wisdom. Now coming back to just the sense of where you're sitting, maybe the sounds around you, sound of my voice. And preparing yourself to come back when you're ready. When it feels right, just gently opening your eyes and arriving back here together. Thank you. As folks come back, I just want to recognize we all, many of us, do this bowing. And what that means, and certainly what it means to me, is that I'm bowing to the Buddha inside each of us, the soul, precious soul within each of us, bowing to each other. Can look like something religious, but it's not. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick check. If I'm speaking at this volume, Emily, can you hear me okay?
Your voice dropped quite a bit when you started the meditation. I have my sound cranked up. I don't know if anybody else is
Okay.
having this problem. If
Bob,
nobody else is, then it's my issue.
Bob, this is Mark. It's kind of hard to hear you. I'm cranked up too, and I'm still having to really lean in to hear you.
Okay. Hold on one second here.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate you letting me know. Try something else. I'll be right back.
Bob, it's not the technology. As soon as you close your eyes, your voice gets softer.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I will work on this. This is better,
No,
right? Thank you.
it's not your volume.
Okay, good. Thank you. I will work on that. Thank you, everyone. All right. So I want to share with you um, some wisdom that came from a talk, came to me at a difficult time in my life from an amazing teacher who I feel like I know from the other teachers that I've had, such as specifically Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock. Um, and this is Ajahn Chah, who was an amazing teacher. And I happened to pick up this book called Food for the Heart after having heard a lot about Ajahn Chah, but having been less familiar with him. And he was a Thai forest master, meaning he was had his um, temple, his place of meditation in Thailand. And Jack Cornfield and many others spent time with him there. But like the Buddha, he was a very, very practical man. And I love his teachings, and they speak to me because they are very clear. And I think they say so much about how we can meditate, what it means. And he has a wonderful way of setting aside some common misconceptions I want to talk about. So I'm going to begin this talk based on a talk that he gave in the same way that he did. And I learned that he gave this talk more recently. I learned this, that he gave this talk at the very end of his life, it was very end of his teaching life. And he passed away not terribly long after he gave this talk. So this may have been the last talk that he gave. And he turned to all of these monks around him and probably other participants, visitors, as there often were for him. And he asked these questions. He said, "Have you seen still water?" So, how many of you have seen still water? And then he said, "Have you seen flowing water?" How many hands? And then he said, "Have you seen still flowing water?" I think fewer hands went up for that one. Within this paradox, this talk called still flowing water, I think one can find the entire core of the Buddha's teachings, teachings about suffering, how and why we suffer, the origins of our suffering, and the path beyond it, and how mindfulness meditation, the kind of meditation that Ajahn Chah taught and that Tara and Jack and so many great teachers now bring to us, can play a critical role in our understanding of this suffering and our ability to transcend it. So today I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about how and why we are both still and flowing in our meditation practice. What did he mean by that, still flowing? And then I want to talk about how this can help us develop wisdom and ultimately freedom from suffering in our lives. Because that's, of course, at the end, what this is all about, how we can find that path to freedom and reducing the suffering in our lives. So let's begin with this. How are we both still and flowing in meditation? We often focus on the stillness. So we do cultivate stillness in meditation, of course. We're working on that in this opening meditation. How do we do that? What does it mean to cultivate stillness in meditation? So let's just kind of think of this step by step. Well, we're generally quiet, which is sometimes a synonym for still. We're often not quiet in our lives. Our lives are not very quiet. When I first started meditating, I almost got lost in that. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not a quiet person. People couldn't believe that I went to silent meditation retreats. We get quiet. Okay, that's an obvious one, but that's a clear first step. We do seek to calm both our body and our mind. So we get into this state or seek this state of a certain calm. And we adopt an intention to focus our mind on right now, the present moment, which often we're not. We're not even trying to. We're thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future, but we're not really trying to focus on the present moment. So we say, okay, now intentionally, while we're quiet and trying to calm ourselves a bit, we're going to try to stay in the present moment. And we do this often, start out by connecting to our body, which of course our body can only be in the present moment. And our minds go all over the place, but the body has to be here. So we connect to our bodies. And as a tool to support this intention to be in the present moment, to be still and to have a sense of calm, we choose something to help us stay connected. And very often that's the breath, because the breath, of course, is very present in this moment. That's where it happens. We feel the body breathing itself. Or we use a mantra. And that is another tool that we can use to keep us focused in the here and now. And we call this an anchor. But of course, what we find is the anchor is not as effective often as we think. Our mind drifts and flows. Wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting into the flowing part. But we are practicing. Then we practice at gently bringing ourselves back to the present moment. Now, this is all basics. This all sounds pretty easy. Of course, hard to do, but pretty straightforward. But here is where, when we think about that stillness and cultivating that stillness, even we experienced meditators, and certainly those who are new to it, can begin to get confused about what we're doing, about why we are still, what still really means. And this is a major subject of Ajahn Chah. There's a wonderful picture of him in this book. First off, stillness does not mean physical stillness. As he points out, and I'm going to read now from his book, some people think that meditation means to sit in some special way. But in actual fact, standing, sitting, walking, and reclining are all vehicles for meditation practice. It's important to remind ourselves of this. It doesn't have to be sitting. And now the really important. Stillness and mindfulness meditation does not mean shutting the mind down altogether and totally piecing out. Sure, after you meditate for a period of time, you can find these moments of stillness, and that's a wonderful thing. But the point is not to shut down the mind. So, just by show of hands, curious, I'll bet there'll be a lot of them. How many of you have heard friends or family members say something like, I just can't meditate. I can't concentrate on anything. My mind goes all over the place. How many people? One of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is, I think, one of the greatest barriers, especially for new people getting into meditation, is the belief that everybody here is blissing out and in the present moment, and my mind's running around and I'm not doing it and I can't do it. That is a myth. And Ajahn Chah speaks to that again and again in Still Flowing Water. And I'm going to give you one passage. He says, and this is how plain spoken the man is, whenever we sit, the mind immediately goes running off. We follow it and try to bring it back. Observe it once more. Then it goes off again. This is what you are supposed to be studying. Most people refuse to learn their lessons from nature, like a naughty school kid who refuses to do their homework. They don't want to see the mind changing. But then, how are we going to develop wisdom? When we know that the mind is just this way, constantly changing, when we know that this is its nature, we will understand it. Understanding is what we're after. We can even get confused, those of us who are experienced meditators, especially, and study the Dharma, when we think about the meaning of the Sanskrit word samadhi, which is generally translated as concentration. And indeed, there are a whole range of practices designed to help cultivate concentration, which are very important. But it's very interesting what he says at the very beginning of his talk about this. He says, samadhi literally means the firmly established mind. To develop samadhi, you don't have to go bottling the mind up. Some people try to get peaceful by sitting quietly and having nothing disturb them at all. That's just like being dead. Practice of samadhi is for developing wisdom and understanding. Samadhi is the firm mind, the one-pointed mind. On which point is it fixed? It's fixed on the point of balance. That's its point. But people practice meditation by trying to silence their minds. They say, I try to sit in meditation, but my mind won't be still for a minute. Here he goes again, making this point. One instant it flies off one place, the next instant it flies off somewhere else. How can I make it stop? You don't have to make it stop. That's not the point. Where there is movement is where understanding can arise. So, purpose of cultivating stillness is not to shut our mind down or bliss out. That's called often spiritual bypass. It's not simply to have really groovy transcendent experiences. There's a great story I heard told by at one Dharma talk I attended about a student who, very eager student, was meditating and had this incredible experience, ran to the teacher and said, teacher, I saw the Buddha in my meditation. And the teacher was reported to have said, okay, sit back down, pay attention to your breath, and the Buddha will stop bothering you. I have had amazing meditations where I'm seeing color. It's a great thing. But the point is not to grasp on these really groovy experiences. Purpose is to develop wisdom or insight into how the mind works. And I would suggest to everyone, whether you be experienced or a new meditator, that that openness to whatever the body and the mind are creating in the moment, that's where the richness, that's where the gold is. This is why our practice is called insight meditation or mindfulness meditation. Or if you use the Pali word for it, the original word, it's vipassana. And that means clear seeing. So this is about developing insights. And I would submit to you, and in a little bit, I'm going to describe some very personal experiences in this regard. I would suggest to you that the most productive, the most meaningful, the most insightful meditations often can come from those moments where you're grappling, where your mind might be running around or might be focusing on something challenging or something difficult. So the mind, the feelings are flowing while you are cultivating this stillness. And that's where the gold is. By choosing to fully embrace this still flowing water, even and especially when it feels like suffering itself, we develop a deeply felt sense of what suffering is and why we are suffering. And that helps lead to the path out of it. Many of us know that at the very core of the Buddha's teachings, and that's why I think they are embodied in still flowing water, is the Four Noble Truths. And I'll paraphrase because in a sense, they're very simple to intellectually understand, more challenging to feel. And that's what our practice is about. So, the first noble truth that there is suffering in life, there's feelings of life being unsatisfactory, there's pain, physical pain, there's painful feelings, difficult feelings. So there is suffering in life. That's the first noble truth. Very easy to understand and agree with. The second is that the origin of real suffering and where we compound the sense of physical pain or emotional pain or whatever, the origin of that kind of suffering is craving, wanting, thirsting for things to be different than they are, wanting the pain to go away, or if it's something very pleasurable, grasping onto it and never wanting it to change, not accepting that things are impermanent. I really love this person. I can never accept if I lose them. And yet we know we lose the things and the people that we love. So the origin of this suffering is craving. And the third noble truth is that you can end your suffering, that it's not inevitable. And the fourth is that there's a path to do this, which is an eightfold path, of which mindfulness, right mindfulness, is one piece. And I won't go into the full path, but what we find in meditation is that we begin to really understand how and why we suffer in our lives in a kind of a microscopic and also felt sense. The teacher called Philip Moffat is a wonderful teacher. He um, came to spirituality a little bit later in life after he was a CEO of Esquire, saved the magazine, and then had some really profound spiritual experiences and decided to go on a spiritual path. He wrote a book called Dancing with Life, and he talks about these noble truths and the existence of suffering. And he says that in order to really find the path out of suffering, we have to first, as he puts it, feel the ouch of our own suffering. Often we want to push away the ouch. We don't want to deal with it. But to really understand it and transcend it, we have to feel the ouch. Ajahn Chah has another thing that he says about this. He says there are two kinds of suffering: the suffering that leads to more suffering, and the suffering that leads to the end of suffering. What is he talking about? If you are not willing to face the second kind of suffering, he says, you will surely continue to experience the first. So we need to understand and feel the ouch and accept and deal with the difficult feelings in order to find the path out of suffering. And this is very true from my own experience, which I want to talk to you about for a minute, especially when I get quiet and meditate very extensively on retreat. And that's when I've gone away for weekends or a week and just focused on meditating. I was drawn to retreats because I thought, hey, really cool. I can completely peace out, put my devices away, don't need to worry about work, be quiet, be still, be led by these great masters in meditation, sitting, walking in a beautiful place. Sounds great. But what I often find is that I'm confronting my own suffering, whatever that is, whatever I'm bringing at that point in time becomes more real and more apparent to me. I want to give you a couple examples that are very personal. So I went on my first long weekend retreat at the Garrison Institute in upstate New York. with Jack Cornfield. And hearing Jack, um, and then also having had experience with Tara Brach was the thing that drew me to teaching and made me decide to take the mindfulness meditation teacher certification program. This was a profound experience I had. And at this period of time, it's Labor Day weekend, um, I was dealing with a very difficult time that ultimately led to the dissolution, parting of the ways with my wife and our marriage. And that was a really difficult thing I was grappling with at that time. And being quiet, meditating, feelings kept arising. They were very powerful. We had a session, as one often does on retreat, with the teachers and other students. And we each talked about what was arising for us. So I spoke about this in slightly more veiled terms than I just described them to you, but I described that I was dealing with a difficult situation in a relationship and fears and strong feelings around that. And this is fairly early in my, this is maybe the second retreat I'd been on. And the teacher said, you should keep meditating on it, stay with it, and keep asking yourself, what am I feeling? And what am I afraid of? Keep asking yourself that. So I left that session and I walked down this path and I found a really beautiful little bench sitting right under a tree. I thought, oh, this is cool. I can be like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. Um, Beautiful day. You could hear the birds, feel nature. Sat down, closed my eyes, and began meditating on what was happening to me. And all these powerful feelings started to arise. And I, as instructed, asked myself, what is it you're feeling? Where are you feeling it? Why are you feeling this? And I ultimately came down to, um, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to lose my status as a married man. And so why? Because I don't know that anybody's ever going to love me like this again. I'll be alone. Got really, really close to those fears. And they were very, very real. And that experience became very revealing to me. I didn't come out of that meditation all happy or resolved, but I really understood what was going on. And I was able to grapple with and deal with those feelings to reduce some of the suffering that I was feeling. And I realized I was clinging. I was clinging to wanting this relationship to be different than it was, for wanting it to continue in a way that really couldn't at that time, despite a lot of effort. I was clinging to the identity. I was identifying with these feelings. I wanted my identity to be as a married man. And in that clinging was a lot of suffering. And confronting that face to face was powerfully helpful to me, even though I wasn't altogether happy or thrilled that I went off on this retreat to be in nature and to be calm and still, and these kind of feelings were flowing. But that's where the gold was. That's where the potential and ultimately actual transformation in my thinking was. Remember the second noble truth I talked about earlier. Suffering comes from clinging, desire to have things be a certain way, and from identifying as yourself with those feelings and feeling you can't be yourself without them. This is so fundamental that the Buddha said, he who knows clinging and non-clinging knows all the Dharma. I'll go off myself for 1 second because this is an Ajahn Chah story that Jack Cornfield told. Jack had a very difficult relationship with his father. And when he was with Ajahn Chah in the forest, hot, difficult, mosquitoes everywhere, he was there and he was grappling with his feelings. And he went to Ajahn Chah and said, Um, honestly, I am angry. I'm sitting and I'm really, really angry and I want to transcend it, but I'm angry at my father and these feelings keep coming up and I get angrier and angrier, maybe expecting Ajahn Chah to say, well, don't get tangled in those feelings. Here's how you and Ajahn Chah said to him, well, if you're going to do anger, really do it right. Go back, you know, put blankets around yourself, get good, sweaty, and hot, and feel that anger. We have to deal with those feelings and experience those feelings in meditation, feeling that flow as we generate some of that stillness in order to change. And I'm going to tell one more story, and this is more recent. I was at Spirit Rock, which is in Northern California. It's another Labor Day retreat, interestingly enough. And it's a beautiful place, Marin County, north of San Francisco. Jack Cornfield was one of the founders. I had a wonderful set of teachers in this retreat. Huere Sala, it's wonderful. She's the one that I'm going to attend the retreat with this afternoon. I mentioned at the top. Howie Cohn, James Baraz. Anyway, it was a great place. It's a beautiful place. But what I didn't realize, actually I did realize, but didn't realize how it would feel until I got there, is it's not flat in Northern California. It's very hilly. I didn't like that. I was not feeling comfortable in my body. I don't like the size of my body now. And I didn't like going up and down those hills. And that suffering with that and my physical self became a big theme for me. It kept arising for me. And my meditations were thinking about that. And it got worse. I started noticing, oh, yeah, when I walk down the hill to, down the hill to where we had our meals, well, look at how everybody's passing me. I'm too slow. Um, and then we had a yoga session. Well, I can't do this. Look at everybody else. I'm not. And it just became this dukkha, this suffering that I was sitting with in all my meditations. And I even, to add to my own sense of suffering, I added envy for our meditation teacher, who's a very small woman. And I began, my mind was ranging, oh yeah, she's like a little bird and I'm this big dodo bird and this is horrible and I don't like this and I'm not happy, and on and on and on. Why is my room on the second floor? True. And it would have been easy. And I threw shame on top of this to just say, this is ridiculous. What's wrong with you? You're here in this beautiful place and you're complaining. There was some of that too. All those feelings arising. And they were a big deal for me because this whole physical sense tied to my image of myself. And then all of these things kept churning and churning and churning. We had another one of the sessions with a teacher. I talked about this, that I wasn't having such a great time. One of the other people in my sharing group said he was having all these wonderful, expansive experiences. Mine weren't expansive. I said for me, it's suffering and more suffering. And the instruction was be with it, be with it. So I did for a couple of days. And then after all of that, one night we were meditating, and this was whoever Sala, the teacher, did a metta meditation with a chant. It was really beautiful. And I decided that I would just sit there after she was done in the meditation room quietly and begin meditating. And I came to understand, as I had been dealing with all of these difficult feelings, I thought about that meditation teacher. I thought about what a beautiful person she was. And I thought about how crazy it was for me to not see her as she was, because I began seeing that. And I felt a sense of lifting of these feelings. I got myself into a sense of some stillness. And I really began to feel physically a sense of the lifting. I could feel that I was grounded. I could feel my hands beside me on the chair. I could feel my sore back. I kept checking in to make sure that I knew how I felt. But I also felt a real physical sense of being lifted. I was feeling grounded, but I was feeling lifted, and I was feeling a sense of peace and a sense of infinite space, something I never really felt that way before. And the sense that there was a consciousness, an awareness that sat behind, but actually, for that moment, was in the foreground of what I was seeing, an expansive, open awareness. It transcended time. I still knew that I had a sore back and I felt my hands. But I also knew that I was more than just that body. Behind that, or in front of me, was that sense of open awareness. I don't believe I ever could have got to that moment without the difficult moments before that. At that retreat, and that's when I turned the corner at that retreat. At that retreat, or through my meditation experience. The only way I could get to that sense of the still water, that sense of our basic awareness, was by experiencing flowing. That was critical. I came back, and that's why I'm giving you this talk today, the still flowing water, because as I thought about that experience, I realized, yeah, that's what it is. And I want to end my talk here with this quotation, the very end. Again, this is Ajahn Chah speaking to his students, maybe the last talk that he gave. And he says, now this is the important point. If you know that all things are impermanent, all your thinking will gradually unwind. When you reflect on the uncertainty of everything that passes, you'll see that all things go the same way. Whenever anything arises, all you need to do is say, "Oh, another one." If your mind is peaceful, it will be just like still flowing water. Have you ever seen still flowing water? Just that. You've seen flowing water and still water, but maybe never still flowing water. Right there, right where your thinking cannot take you, right in the peacefulness, you can develop wisdom. Your mind will be like flowing water, and yet it's still. Still and yet flowing. So I call it still flowing water. Wisdom can arise here. So maybe just taking a moment here now to collect ourselves. And I think we're gonna do a little meditation now. Um, and we'll have some time for sharing after it. And I like to also think of it as sort of an exercise building on what we were just talking about, what I was talking about in terms of still flowing water, in terms of feeling that flow of feelings and being open to them, and how that opens us to understand our own suffering, where we identify with those feelings and how to transcend it. So we're going to do a meditation that Tara Brach often leads so beautifully. And I really learned it from Tara as much as anybody else. Um, and it's a process where we recognize difficult feelings that are arising. We allow them, and as opposed to usually pushing them away, we investigate a little bit about those feelings and then we nurture ourselves. So I'd like to lead you in that. And so just inviting you now again to find a comfortable position for you so that we can meditate together. Again, feeling free to sit or stand or lie down, whatever's good for you. Just pick a position where you can be comfortable as well as alert. Just taking on that posture and gently closing your eyes or looking down in an unfocused way so you can come inward. Coming again back into the body just as it is, where you are in this moment. Maybe relaxing and softening your neck, your shoulders, torso, letting your belly be soft. With any areas where you feel tightness, just seeing if you can loosen, relax. Feel yourself breathing in and out. Just noticing the breath. Again, breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. Just noticing the breath as it moves through your body. Your chest or belly rising and falling. The breath moving through your nose and mouth. And if you like, you can let your breath be your home base. You can keep coming back to it as your mind wanders. Just knowing this is totally normal. And you can just gently bring your attention back to your breath and start again. Inviting you now to bring to your mind sort of your inner sense, a situation that can bring up difficult or challenging feelings or thoughts. for you. It can be any situation arising anywhere with anyone or about anything that comes to mind. Something maybe that can cause you to feel sad or angry or frustrated. It's not something that's traumatic. Want to experience trauma. So maybe not something that is a level 9 or 10, but something maybe between a 4 and a 6 on the challenge level, but just some emotion, some situation that you can envision that causes some painful feelings to arise. Inner wisdom will tell you what to focus on in this moment. And if you can, visualizing this situation as specifically as you can. What happened, what was said, almost like you're watching a play or a movie. Just really seeing this in your mind's eye. Just recognizing, what am I feeling? As you envision this situation, recognize what you're feeling in your mind or what you're feeling in your body. What are those emotions? Just naming them. Whatever they are, being gentle with yourself, taking in what you can at your own pace. How am I feeling? And if you ever feel any signs of acute distress or trauma or pain, feel free to stop, relax, and attend to yourself. But if you can, just naming the emotions you're feeling. It could be fear, maybe sadness, or anger, or even regret or shame, or some combination of these feelings or other emotions. Just taking a few moments to notice and really recognize what you're feeling in this moment in silence. Sometimes in meditation and in life, we have a natural tendency to want to push these feelings away. Maybe we feel guilty about having them. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be sad about this. But here we focus on allowing, allowing these feelings to be just as they are. Seeing if you can give yourself understanding the passion, the compassion to say, I know this is hard, but I'm going to allow these feelings in my loving awareness, caring for myself, opening myself and allowing these feelings just exactly as they are for me in my body, in my mind, or in my heart. right now. And if there is some natural resistance to allowing these difficult feelings, see if you can allow that too. Just recognizing the pushing back on difficult feelings is a normal part of our internal experience, another part of what is in this situation. Now just silently focusing on allowing these feelings. And as we envision this situation, as you recognize and allow these feelings, it's very natural for curiosity to arise. To want to understand exactly what it is you're experiencing, to investigate with the same natural curiosity that a loved one would. Maybe ask yourself, how am I feeling this most in my body? Maybe it's in the head, the belly, chest. Maybe it's your heart center. And how does it feel? What's the felt sense? To bring tightness or compression. It's often the case with difficult feelings. Is it hot or cold or aching or sore? How am I carrying these feelings in my body? As we approach these feelings with curiosity, you also might ask yourself, what is it I'm believing about this? What story might I be telling myself about this situation? Am I maybe thinking I'm flawed or to blame for it? Am I feeling shame? Am I angry at myself or others who I believe have created these feelings for me? What are the stories? And the goal is not to get lost in the thoughts or the stories here, just noticing what is the story or what are any core beliefs behind this challenging feeling. Where is the emotional charge that is arising here? And then we come to the N in rain, which stands for nurturing. With that same loving curiosity you use to explore the feelings and understand them, maybe asking yourself, what does this place of aching or soreness in my body or in my feelings, what does it most need? What do I most need in this moment? Maybe just acknowledging it's okay. It's understandable that you feel this. Maybe just being seen for these feelings. Sometimes it helps to actually put your hand to your heart or to your belly or any place in your body where you may be experiencing these sensations. Sometimes just a gentle touch can help. So, inviting you to do that if that's helpful. Just giving yourself the nurturing, the acceptance, the love. And sometimes it can be difficult to give that to ourselves. So, if it's easier or helpful, you can imagine another loved one, a teacher. It could be the Buddha, it could be Jesus, it could be whatever caring, deeply caring and wise person you can imagine giving that to you as you deal with this challenging feeling. It's nurturing you, caring for you. And then we come to what is often called after the rain. It's taking a few moments to reflect on the experience that you just had, how it felt to allow these difficult feelings to actually call them to mind, to investigate and be curious about why they're arising and how they feel in our body and mind, and then nurturing, giving nurturing, and imagining the potential that this can bring. Taking even a few moments to do this in our daily lives. And bringing to our minds and our hearts the words of Dana Faulds in her poem, Allow. There is no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt containing a tornado. Dam a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist and the tide will sweep you off your feet. Allow and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in, the wild and the weak, fear, fantasy, failures, and success. When loss rips off the doors of the heart, or sadness veils your vision with despair, practice becomes simply bearing the truth. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your new eyes. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your new eyes. And now preparing slowly to come back. Sense of the air around you, any sounds, sense of sitting, physical sense of being here, and that sense of being together in community. And when you're ready, gently opening your new eyes and rejoining our community and preparing to share together.